Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis. Although most of the cars I source are between £1,000 and £5,000, very often I've been asked to show something a little bit cheaper on the channel, and so I came up with No Budget Reviews, the series where we look at cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and you can enjoy driving. We don't film this in an expensive manner, we don't use separate microphones, we don't use fluid head tripods, we don't even use a DSLR, but we do have a lot of fun. Some of you on the channel have actually asked before, what was the first R8 type Rover 200 that you owned? And it looked almost identical to this. It was a 1996 216 SLI automatic, and I did say 96 because it was registered October 96, although it would have been built considerably earlier than that. Around the time of this one, actually, this is a 1995 214 SLI manual in Nightfire red, just like the one I had was, owned by Mr. Harwood from the Roverjoe channel. He's also done the same thing that I did actually with the passenger door lock. Exactly the same. Mine had a rear spoiler, although the spoiler actually wasn't the correct colour for the car. It was like a gloss black someone had put on. This one hasn't got the rear spoiler, but in every other respect it's just a nicer kind of version of the car that I had. Like mine as well, there's a little bit of a problem with the boot. That's quite common on these actually. Same wheel trims, sunroof's the same, steering wheel's the same, and you know, having driven a lot of R8s, I've never driven a 5-door with a 1.8 K series. In fact, I've never driven any R8 with a 1.4 K series, so this is a delight for me. It just all feels so familiar. Everything is in the same position, the doors make the same noise, the seat's exactly the same, driving position's the same. One difference we do have is the fact that I didn't have the original stereo in like this. I had a much later stereo than mine. Alarm buttons there. The airbag light's actually on here because this early dashboard, you can't fit a passenger airbag to it. And there weren't any airbags at all available. So when they introduced the airbags, I think from about 93 onwards to the R8 sort of range, unless you have one with a later dash, which would be the coupe convertible and tourer from about early 96 onwards, you have this funny little SRS light on there. Electric sunroof, the earlier SLIs didn't come with that. There is an air conditioning button, but on an R8 the air conditioning was a very, very expensive option, so you don't see too many with them. Sunroof cover I remember as well. That's where the manual sunroof would be on an earlier SLI. Tapes are in the tape holders. Oh, the very best of the Electric Light Orchestra. Excellent taste, Mr. Harwood. 5-speed manual in this car. This is the R65 gearbox. It's a Peugeot derived unit. It was used up until, I think the last car to use it was the R50 Mini. Early versions of that actually. Clutch will bite quite high as it does in R8s and R3s. This is quite a tight gear changeover for an R65. That feels pretty good actually. We'll see when we get it for a drive exactly how good that is. But again, because this is an R8, we get the through flow ventilation there. This is the earlier dash as opposed to the Cabrio you might have seen with the later dash that they came with. But this is the material from the later ones, and you do have a seat height adjuster on this trim level, which will be good. It's just brilliant. I'll have to check the secret mission documents a bit later on as well. And a little coin tray just there next to the mirror switch. It's actually lined with felt. And the same sort of stalks as well. And an electric mirror switch. I think that mirror switch went through to the end of Rover 45 production actually, which is it's crazy. Right, let's go in the back, shall we? Right. They really went for this kind of mini limo feel in the R8s, and there's not the most amount of room in the back, but it's actually reasonably comfortable. You can put your feet underneath there without any problem. The headlining is sagging because of course they always do in these cars. Just manual windows in the back. You had to step up to something like, I think, a GSI. Even then it was an option to get the electric rear windows. I don't think necessarily the GSI had standard electric rear windows. But yes, rear headrest in this one because it's a late one. And you get an armrest, which is nice. Condition of this interior is remarkably good. Supplied from a garage, which was near where we used to live, which is sort of down Kingston on Thames way, which just over the border in Surrey is where we used to live, about 12 minutes from Kingston. So the area is very familiar to me, although Mr. Harwood obviously has this car up in I'm in Yorkshire now. Lots of Rover branded accessories, little stop lock there, no door bins or anything like that in the back, but nicely trimmed with this wood. This is what I go on about, sort of wood and things like that. And I've forgotten actually these later SLRs have a centre console. That's pretty handy. And a little ashtray here. Sweet ashtray. Ooh, is that? Yes, viewers. Yes, please. Rover branded mats. I'm too excited, aren't I, viewers? You can tell. I was going to put my secret mission documents in, but I don't think we're doing that today, viewers. It is a shame, but there we go. Door pockets are quite narrow, and the ones that I had were a bit narrow. And also there is a hole in the bottom, which isn't actually, it's not a problem, it's just the way that they tend to be. Excellent. Under the bonnet we don't find the same engine that I had in both my R8s. Instead, this is a 1.4K series with 103 horsepower. After 1992, the power was up to a bit. Originally it was 95 horsepower. And the way you can tell if it's a 1.4K series is with these indicators, which came in October 92. Although the grille was only originally fitted to the 400 R8 models at that time, it came to the 200s later when dealers actually had people demand. Apologies for the plane, viewers. Dealers had people demand that they fit the grills to them, even if they actually weren't originally like that. So you do find plenty of cars that have the grills fitted before, I think it was 1994, when all the 200s also had the grille as well as the indicators. It looks very nice actually with this updated bumper profile. Although no fog lights on this, you had to get a special bumper, I think, actually for those, a much higher trim level, like a GSI Turbo would have had those. With the K-Series engines, they can be very, very good, but if you do have problems with the head gasket, you must actually do that properly. A lot of people used to say fit the Model S steel ones, which were a popular thing to do about 10 years ago. Really, these days, the wisdom is to fit an original spec head gasket. Apologies for the plane, viewers. Original spec head gasket if it happens, a Victor Reince one, or maybe a Lloyd spec one. Make sure the head is skimmed properly, make sure you change the water pump, and get someone who knows what they're doing. You would have seen on the Furious Driving channel when Mr. Richardson's 200 VI needed a new head gasket. It was done actually by Mr. Coleman, rubbish mechanic, who also works on my cars for me, because he's like that. With the Honda D-Series engine, these also came with, and in fact both of mine had the Honda D-Series engine. The engine turns the other way entirely. It actually, all the things are on this side as opposed to that side. And those are very reliable engines. Again, they have a cam belt and make sure it's done. They also can leak from the cam cover gasket. K-Series could do that as well, but just that's my experience of them. If you find a Honda one that's all clean, that's quite a good sign actually. The Honda D-Series ones do blow head gaskets, but not nearly as much as the K-Series. But like I said, if you get someone who does it properly, and you know, skims the head if there's skim left in it, and puts it back together properly, then these can be fine. You can actually increase the horsepower. We'll talk about some of the other engine options in the car when we go out for a little drive, which we will do now, because I have been missing driving one of these cars. Lloyd Vehicle Consulting stickers, t-shirts and mugs are available by clicking the link to the Google form in the video description below. So this car feels very, very familiar to me to drive, but it's just very strange because the engine sounds completely different and it's a manual, so that's sort of major difference. So at launch, the two engines available were the 1.4 K series, which is the first application of the K series anywhere in the world, with 95 horsepower and fuel injection, and then the Honda D series engine. Now that came in both single overhead cam and twin cam versions. I think the single overhead cam was about 115 horsepower, the twin cam was 122. Twin cam was most common in the GTI, but that also came with a single cam version. It's very confusing. The catalysed version of that engine, I think, did about 110 horsepower, but I could be wrong about that. In October '92, with the new indicators that we've mentioned, the K series was up to 103 horsepower. Now, about 1990, there was a carb version of the K series released, and things like the 214S, like we've seen today actually. The gentleman bought a 3-door 214S for us to have a look at. It doesn't have a wood or anything in it like this at all. It's a very basic car. That's up to 75 horsepower. When Euro 1 emissions came in January 1993, there was a 75 brake horsepower version of that engine made available for sale with fuel injection and a cat. That's quite rare. I don't think I've seen too many of those around actually. So that's the 1.6 it's dealt with. The 2 litres were first of all the M series engine, 138 horsepower. That was replaced, I think, around 92, again probably for that Euro 1 emissions facelift, with T series. M series 138 horsepower when it came out in, I think, 91. The T series 136 horsepower, like in the convertible, not the convertible, the coupe Mr. Richardson has, which I have driven actually on Twin Jacket Reviews back in 2019. 136 horsepower. It's a pretty good engine actually, the T series. And then the T series turbo with 197 horsepower, but is begging to scrabble the front tyres. There are also some diesels available, but as usual, due to controversial government legislation and all kinds of other reasons, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. We do talk about is the driving experience of even like a standard R8 like this. It's pretty good. Certainly they handle better with alloy wheels, and the GSI that I drove last year that belongs to Mr. Chris James, that had alloy wheels. It's a 1990 216 GSI also, but this feels okay even without them. Just drum brakes at the back. The higher models actually did get disc brakes. Let's go around this roundabout to see if we've got some body lean. Actually, we've got a bit, but it's not too bad. It's really on a par with the Mark III Astra that I've just driven. And the steering's so positive. The engine just sounds great. It's remarkable that, you know, in 1992, Ford were getting something like 70 horsepower out of a 1.4, and this is 103. It's just amazing. Trim levels available on the sort of standard R8s were I, SI, SLI, GSI, GSI Turbo, and then things like the S and the Sprint. One very popular trim level towards the end of 5-door R8 production was the SEI, which continued for a lot longer than you'd think. You think it was special edition, just kind of toward the end of production, but I think it was from like 1994 onwards. And those had some very interesting seats, like GSI style seats and things like that. They're quite desirable even today. You can still pick up an R8 for less than £1,000, otherwise this wouldn't be no budget reviews. But for a car that looks like this and has such low mileage, this car has done less than 50,000 miles, you're going to be paying a little bit more than that these days. It's a real shame that I'm going to have to not go home in this, because in some ways I sort of want to. It is just great. The ones with seat height adjustment like this are more comfortable to drive, and the characteristic of this K series is just brilliant. I really like it. I can see why they fitted both the K series and the D series to these early R8s, and then just the K series for the 1.4s and 1.6s later. But an absolute and utter joy. And I'm so grateful to Mr. Harwood for letting me have a go in this, because it takes me back and reminds me about why I like R8s so much. In fact, my lady wife, after we sold our second R8, which was a 91, 2 years ago, she really still misses that car, and it kind of makes me think, is it time for us to maybe look at getting another one? I don't know. Answers in the comments section below. So viewers, I don't know why I'm even asking this question, but should you consider an R8 Rover 200 for your hard-earned budget of up to £1,000? I think you're asking the wrong person that question. I've had two of these personally. I've driven loads of them on the channel, and I absolutely love them. There are things to watch out for, principally rust and things like cam belts and head gaskets and other exciting things. And sometimes the immobilizer can be a bit funny, but just driving this today, this car, it's in really nice condition, has reminded me how much I love these cars and how they make just one of the most perfect starter classics that you can possibly imagine. So thank you ever so much indeed to Mr. Harwood, again from Roverjoe, for letting me drive his car. Thank you to Mr. Richard for putting on this wonderful event at the Motorist in Yorkshire. And thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below. It does very, very much help out, and enables us to go out and make videos like this. Thank you ever so much indeed once again.